Hi guys! Today we're going to be graphing again from slope-intercept form. However, today the original equations are not going to be in slope-intercept form. So this video is going to focus on how to convert something into slope-intercept form so that we will be able to graph it. I will not be doing any actual graphing examples on this video. To see graphing examples, watch yesterday's video, or you have to watch the next video, which has a couple of graphing examples on it. But let's go ahead and get started with converting. So on tonight's homework, it's going to ask you to graph the equation, but it wants it to be in slope-intercept form. And so I'm going to show you 3 examples of how to change something from a different equation into slope-intercept. For our first example, we will be changing something from standard form into slope-intercept form. When changing something from standard form into slope-intercept form, first it's important to remember what slope-intercept form looks like. It's y equals mx plus b. So our main goal in all of the problems today is going to be to get the letter y all by itself. To change from standard form to slope-intercept form, it's always going to be only 2 steps. Our first step is always going to be to take the letter x and move it to the other side. So I'm going to take my 2x and I'm going to subtract it to the other side of the equal sign. Now you'll notice in slope-intercept form, my letter x is written right after the equal sign. So I'm going to take this minus 2x and I'm going to put it right after the equal sign. And that's going to push the positive 12 to the end of the problem. Your second step is always to take whatever number is being multiplied with your letter y and divide by that number in 3 places. You want to divide the y, the x, and the constant. When dividing the y, the 3's will cancel and the negatives will also cancel. When dividing the x, sometimes it will stay a fraction, which is fine because that's our slope. I do want to point out, though, that if you have a negative divided by a negative, that will turn into a positive. So make sure that when you're writing your answer to this problem, that you're getting a positive number in front of your x. And then 12 divided by negative 3 is negative 4. And so here is my slope-intercept form for this equation. Don't forget, we talked yesterday about when you are graphing these, you need to write down 3 things and you need to have 3 points. The 3 things you should write down are your y-intercept, which is 0, negative 4, it's this last number. And you also want to write down your slope in 2 versions. The first version is exactly how it looks in the equation, positive 2 over positive 3. For the second version, you can change it to a negative 2 over a negative 3, kind of like it was on this step. So then you would graph the negative 4, you would do your positive slope, and you would do your double negative slope to get your 3 points. Next, let's practice changing point slope form into slope-intercept form. When given point slope form, your first step should be to distribute your slope into the parentheses. Since we are changing it to a different format, we are allowed to distribute. When you distribute, it is a multiplication problem. So I'm going to multiply negative 1/2 times x. And then I'm going to multiply negative 1/2 times minus 10. Now, half of 10 is 5. And again, when you have a negative times a negative, it will turn into a positive. So that will turn into a plus 5. Remember, our main goal on slope-intercept form is to get the letter y to be completely alone on the left-hand side. And so looking at my equation, the only thing with my letter y right now is this minus 5. So I'm going to move the minus 5 to the other side by adding it. Negative 5 plus 5 will cancel. Over here, I am going to do 5 plus 5, and I get 10. And at this point in time, my letter y is all by itself, so I'm done, and I would be ready to graph. The 3 things we write before we graph are the y-intercept, 0, 10, and 2 versions of the slope. One version will have the negative sign with the top number, negative 1 over positive 2. And then the second version will have the negative sign with the bottom number, positive 1 over negative 2. Since this was a negative slope, each version will have a negative sign in it. Now, sometimes we're given just a random equation. It's not standard, it's not point slope, it's not slope intercept. It's just like, hey, here's an equation. And so we might need to change that also into slope intercept. Again, your main goal in these problems is to get the letter y by itself. So you just want to figure out where's my letter y and then move everything to the other side. In this problem, on the side where the letter y is, I have parentheses. So I'm going to start by distributing. Now I have a 2 that's being multiplied with the y, and I have a 6 that's being added with the y. When given the choice between moving multiplication and addition, you should always move your addition first. So the first thing I'm going to move is the plus 6, and I'm going to move that by subtracting 6. Notice that I offset it a little bit over here. This 4 has an x next to it, and this 6 does not have an x next to it, so I cannot actually subtract those. So I'm just going to kind of tack it on to the end of the problem. Just like in our standard form, we are now going to take the number that's in front of the letter y, which we're not allowed to have, right? No numbers in front of y. We're going to divide in 3 places by that number. We're going to divide the y and the x and the constant. All 3 of them get divided. And in this problem, they all divide nicely, so we're going to get whole numbers. So these 2's will cancel, and then 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. The 3 things that we're going to write before we start graphing are the y-intercept, which is 0, -3, and then 2 versions of the slope. For the first version, it's +2 over +1. Make sure your slope is always a fraction so that you have a rise and a run. So 2 over 1, and then the complete opposite of that would be a -2 over -1. So you can rise up and run right, or you can rise down and run left. And those would both give you the same thing. This concludes today's video. Make sure that on your homework tonight, after you're done with all this, you are graphing. So I know we didn't graph in the PowerPoint, but you do have to graph for the homework. So make sure that after you've done all this, you have a graph to go with it. Our second video today, we'll have some examples of graphing, but our second video is really to help you with tonight's Delta Math.